Alright guys, for this video we're going to be talking about team composition and who you want to be playing with. What's going to make for the best experience, what's going to make for the worst experience, and why. This is going to be a little bit biased towards Bear because that's what most of my experience is, but a lot of this information is going to be relevant to any type of build that you're playing, whether it be Bear, Panther, Healer, Druid, or one of the other different forms in the future like Rat Poison build or some crazy shit, right? So let's first talk about 2v2s and how those work. Going down each class individually really quickly. First, I'm going to say the best partner for you is probably Druid. And the reason being, you want to look for people who are ratty. Like, I know it's ironic, but ratty, when I say ratty, I mean somebody who's self-sufficient, somebody who can get out of bad situations, somebody that can fight for themselves, somebody that's got poke, somebody that's not going to just die on their own and doesn't have to necessarily commit to fights that they don't want to take. Druid is better than that at anybody, and because Druid has the best mobility in the game, that means that the only other people that can match the mobility are other Druids, and that's just going to be kind of a guiding principle for what you think about when you think about team compositions is your mobility, your flexibility, being able to do resets and things like that, because the players that can play like that, other classes that can do that with you, make for really powerful combinations. So unsurprisingly, I've also got Bard up here. Bard is known for their flexibility, their survivability, and one thing that they do really well is they give you action speed. Action speed on Bear is insane. It makes you attack almost twice, or almost, it feels like 3 times as fast. And then they've got Shriek of Weakness. Shriek is going to reduce their defensive rating against your Bear attacks and make you hit like a fucking truck. So with that in mind, that's what I would consider S tier for 2v2. Going down a tier, down into A tier, just a smidge lower, you've got Ranger. When I was talking about being ratty and being survivally, Rangers inherently do that. They're very glass cannon focused. They have very low health. They're very quick on their feet. They have traps. They can set up ambushes. They can poke from a distance. And all of that works really well with Druid. With Druid, you have the worst range in the game. You have the best mobility in the game, but you have the worst range. You have some of the worst poke in the game. You basically have none, at least for now. So when you're thinking about who you want to play with, think about your weaknesses and compensate for that. So Ranger has extremely good poke, probably the best in the game. They are very good at survivals, keeping themselves up, so they just pair really well with you. Just in general, they don't have any buffs that they can give you, but when you're playing with a Ranger, you're compensating for your own weaknesses. They can help you deal with things that hard counter you, like Wizard, other Warlocks and things like that. They can absolutely just tear up a fight all on their own. They're the type of class that can 1v2 on their own, and when you play with a really good Ranger, you notice like, holy shit, like this actually works really well. Warlock is another one that's also really good. When you're playing with a Warlock, you're looking for somebody who's playing the more meta move speed build because they need to be able to keep themselves up. They should bring Curse of Sacrifice, I think is what it's called, the red fist thing that you see here. They should bring that and put it on you anytime you're going in as a Bear, and they can do it 2 ways. They can either wait for you to be in Bear form actively fighting and hitting somebody, or they can wait for you to roll buffs on yourself and then apply, so that you put heals up on yourself in cover basically when you're about to push a team. Then they curse you, that will dream walk you, and then you run to the enemy backline as fast as you can, turn into a Bear, right click somebody and kill them in 1 hit. I call it bear bombing. People can call it whatever they want, but that combination works extremely well. You're able to use your heals to keep them up during team fights, so that they can keep Hydras up. They can scout out rogues. They can scout, block doorways. Hydra and Druid work really well together. So one way that as a Bear you're going to secure a lot of kills is using your walls, using your treants, using vines, stuff that traps people in a room with you, forces them to commit to a fight with you. Hydra can basically do that infinitely. So you can play doorways really hard with this combination, whereas other classes you wouldn't necessarily be able to, or you'd be relying on yourself entirely to make that happen. So Warlock works really well with Druid. It might even be S tier to some people. I just feel that it's a little bit too squishy for me. They've been nerfed pretty consistently, so finding a really good Warlock that doesn't need to rely on the constant healing that they used to have is harder and harder today. But if you can find one that specifically knows how to work with Druid and knows when to be putting that buff on you, you are just an animal, man. When you get Curse of Sacrifice, I don't know if you guys realize this, it heals you. It doesn't heal you, but it gives you 50 additional health plus an additional ton of damage, a bunch of strength. The extra strength that it gives you on average is about 100 damage per swing. It makes you a one-tap machine, and when they curse you, the amount of health that you gain as long as you stay in bear form for the duration of the curse is going to be more than the damage it took off. So there's no downside there. If somebody wants, if they want to run Eldritch Shield here, they can make it so that you compensate for your weaknesses even more. You put that on, they put that on you when you dive. It makes you a little bit more immune to fireballs, zaps, magic missiles, stuff like that, so you can gap close with more confidence. It does cost them a decent amount of health to do that, so you have to have somebody that's also willing to put Eldritch Shield into their build, which is not always the case, but at the end of the day, you don't necessarily need them to. The real benefit is Curse of Sacrifice and getting that on you so that you can go dive their line. Next up in B tier, we've got Fighter. Fighter is really middle of the road, I'd say. It's decent. It compensates for your weakness because it can run a long bow or even a survival bow, so that they can be really kitey. They can be pretty fast. Rondel fighters with move speed meta are pretty damn flexible. They can survive on their own with second wind. They can 1v1 almost any other class in the game. So they can kind of hold their own, but they don't really bring anything crazy to the table other than just being able to hold their own. So it's kind of right in the middle of the road. I don't think they're great. I don't think they're terrible, but I would rather play with the other 3 classes or the 4 classes listed. In C tier, we've got Rogue and we've got Cleric. Rogue doesn't really do much other than they're ratty and they can survive. Very oftentimes, you're not going to get them into the fight when you need them. Unless you're playing with a Giga-geared super Chad rogue that really knows how to play them on their own and kill people by themselves, you're not going to get too much value from playing with a rogue. The exposed weakness that I have shown here could be the ultimate wombo combo type scenario where they debuff the enemy, reduce their weakness, and then you right-click them with the bear for the one-shot, but why would you do that when you could play with the Bard who can do that to multiple people with no cooldown as much as they want, and give you attack speed benefits, and is not going to vanish while you're fighting? You know, like Rogue needs some serious buffs to their team play. I think that Iron Mace, if you're listening, a Physician's perk that allows Rogue to bandage their allies or something along those lines might be pretty cool. Turn them into a pseudo healer, like a field surgeon type thing. Maybe that would probably be better on Ranger, but something that makes them more team friendly, because I don't feel like many people like playing with rogues right now, but that's a whole nother video. Okay, so let's talk about Cleric. I have Cleric all the way down in C tier, even though I do think that it is decent. I think it's okay. I have a decent amount of time playing with a Cleric just because I have a good friend who happened to be Cleric, and that's his main. You can res. That's one thing that's really nice. It's less valuable in 2s than it is in 3s. In 3s, it's essential. It's crazy good. And Cleric and Druid together have a lot of good synergy in that they can hold a line with each other. They can heal each other. They can reset with their big heals better than anybody else. So you have a lot of staying power in a fight. The problem is you don't get to choose the fight. You have to take that fight because your Cleric is going to get stuck. Your Cleric is slow. Your Cleric has no range. So he has the problems that you have, where you're slow and you have no range, but he has no mobility. He can't leave bad situations. So that's where you get stuck. So you're only as fast as your slowest component, right? And your slowest component is definitely the Cleric in this situation. So you're stuck in fights that you have that your enemy wants to take because you can't just leave. So that's why I put it so low in 2s. In 3s, it's much better because you have a lot of things that you can rotate with. There's not much of a better feeling than switching frontline with your Cleric. Like, he gets low, so you throw a heal and rotate, and throw a heal and rotate, and being able to do that, especially against like other melee, is one of the best feelings in the game, especially when you do it well. But it's not very reliable, and anybody with poke is going to like any kind of warlock, like a warlock ranger, warlock wizard, those type of compositions for you are going to be a nightmare to deal with. So that's why it's so low on this list. Barbarian is extremely low on this list because, again, unless they're running a super meta build and they're super fast, most of the time they have to commit to a fight. They're basically shitty bear, in my opinion. They have high health, high damage, but they lack the mobility of Druid. They don't have any way to heal you. Their buffs that they apply to you are okay, but they're not the best. So I would just honestly rather play with almost any other class except for maybe Wizard or Rogue, just because it's just they don't bring anything new to the table at all. So why would I want to play with one? Same with Wizard. The difference is Wizard, even though you can have success with Wizard, I won't say that you can't. You have to A, be playing with a really good Wizard who knows his shit. B, be playing with a Wizard that has great communication. So communication, honestly, is the most important part of Wizard. Somebody that can tell you when a fireball is coming down range and tell you where to go. Stay left, stay right. When you're pushing a hallway, that type of stuff. And B, somebody who's not afraid to buff you as well and let you take the limelight. Because honestly, you're going to be in the thick of it most of the time. Almost every single kill that you will ever get is going to be melee focused, and a wizard excels at doing big burst damage, AoE damage. So you're going to get fireballed by your wizard. He's going to magic missile you. He's going to hit you with random ice bolts. Like, it just happens, guys. And I wish it was better to play with a wizard. If you had like a dedicated wizard that would buff bot you, he would be like an aura bot and just give you haste, give you invis, give you ignite, like all that stuff. It might be okay, but honestly, you're not going to find a wizard that really wants to do that, at least not consistently. And it's kind of boring. Like, if you're playing with a wizard, you want fucking fireballs going on range, and you want to be blowing up the enemy team, and you want to just like, you want them to carry a lot of the damage. Now, maybe if you play Panther, that would be decent. Maybe if you play healer version of the build, it would be decent. So if you're playing with like a super giga geared, giga skilled wizard, I would play backline support healing bear. I would just wait for the fight to start, wait for your wizard to put some work in, and then commit afterwards. So if your buddy is a wizard, he's dedicated to playing wizard, or you're just going to try and make it work, your gameplay rotation should be let the wizard blow his load. Please don't demonetize me, YouTube. Let him blow his load, get all those spells out, and then commit to the fight and try to secure a kill. If he gets damaged or it gets low, you heal and you zone. You heal and you zone. They're not going to walk past the bear to get to the Druid or to get to the wizard most of the time. And if they do, you punish, you kill them. That's the way that I would play it. Maybe look for roots, maybe look for walls, maybe look to like alley-oop, set up kills for the wizard, but you're not going to be in the limelight most of the time. If you try to and the wizard doesn't have discipline, you will die. So I would just avoid it. You're going to have a better time playing with all the other classes towards the top of the list, I promise. Next up, let's talk about 3v3s. This is a little bit more complex, so I have it already on the screen here all set up so that I can kind of go through it really fast. But a lot of the same things that I talked about from the 2v2 perspective, just kind of scale those up and think about, how ratty is the team? How good is the survival? How good is the durability? How committed to fights are they? What does their burst look like? All that stuff. So first up, what I think the best 3v3 team for you as a druid is probably just fighter cleric. It's a beefy front line. They're not going to fold. You have two healers on the team. You have some of the best resets in the game. You have good poke. You have good range with the fighter as long as he knows how to use his bow. He has second wind. He's self-sustaining. Cleric is self-sustaining. You've just got a lot of different ways that you can play that combination. And with a really beefy frontline like that, they are able to consistently gain attention, gain the enemy's focus. So like barbarians are also pretty decent at that. They're able to just maintain that tunnel vision of the enemy so that you can run around the side, right click a healer with a bear, or just kill a wizard in the back line, or get to their back line and kill the bard, whatever the situation is. This team works really, really well. It's really, really fun to play with. You have res, so oftentimes you might have to take a trade. Somebody dies, especially against another really giga-geared team. It's pretty hard to come out unscathed when you're playing a build like this. It's very front to back play style. It's very just, you know, you gotta wade through the health bars. So having res on site ready to go, like, you get value from it all the time, guys. Earthquake is able to just gut enemy teams so that you can connect with Bear. If you want to run Locust Swarm to reduce healing on the backside of a push, super powerful. There's a lot of different ways you could play this build. It is super fun. It is also very beginner friendly. So if you're looking to build a team and get comfortable with a couple guys, I would say somebody pick a Druid, somebody pick a Cleric, somebody pick a Fighter, and just go at it. Next up, we've got Bard Druid. So again, leaning into the mobility, it's basically the two in the S tier here, but just scaling it up to 3s. I've got some clips that I'll put at the end of this video to just show you how absolutely menacing this can be when the Bard is shrieking the enemy team and then giving 2 bears attack speed. It is, the enemy probably feels like they're living in a fucking zoo, man. It is absolutely brutal. You can just rip teams apart with this. The insane time to kill on this is it's just nothing like it, guys. You're taking the hardest hitting thing in the game, giving it giga attack speed, and then debuffing the enemy so they take even more damage. They just people fold, man.
Yeah.
Somebody's fighting Centipede?
Oh, they're inside there. I'm buffing him. Yeah. Retreat.
Cleric dead.
Find him. Find him.
Centipede dead.
No!
Other guy dead.
Look, I wanted it.
Now, your Bard needs to know how to position. He needs to know how to not get caught out. And same with your other Druid friend. You cannot get caught out in this. You know, if the Druid gets caught out, it's less punishing because he can reset a lot easier. If you get caught out, you can reset a lot easier. If the Bard gets caught out, it's going to be rough. So you really need a good Bard who understands positioning for this to feel good. But when you guys get that rotation down, when you figure out what the flow of combat feels like, this build is insane. This combo is insane. And then number 3 for S tier, what I'd also consider really powerful is Bard Warlock. For all the reasons I talked about with Warlock, they've got good poke, they've got the Curse of Sacrifice, you have really good buffs. So for you as a Druid, you're living La Vida Loca, man. You've got fucking Sacrifice on you, you've got the attack speed from the Bard, you've got the +2 extra stats, you can get Eldritch Shield, you've got the Hydra giving you alley-oops, locking people into rooms with you. So it just works really well with Druid, specifically Bear Druid. So really recommend if you've got a good Warlock buddy, a good Bard buddy, super powerful. In A tier, it's double Druid, so I'd be saying running triple Druid here. It's not S tier because it's too much of a good thing. You have no poke. You have no poke, guys. So unless you have 3 extremely talented Druids that can just kill people on their own, separate, get one-shots, and get out, which does happen. That's why I have this in A tier. I've done triple Druid a bunch of times, and it is super fun because people just don't know how to handle it. When you drop 3 treants in the room, start dropping vines and walls and everything, and then 3 dudes come in and turn into bears and just start trying to murder everything in their path. It's extremely fun, but it is really skill dependent. You cannot have a bad Druid in the group or a Druid that's trying to learn in the group, because you'll be flying through modules, leaning into the strengths of this build with pure mobility. And if you have one guy that's like still trying to learn how to door jump here, the other 2 guys will get into a fight and they'll be like, dude, where the fuck are you? Oh, bro, I'm 2 modules back trying to jump through a door still. Like, that is not fun and it is not good. So I would say don't do triple Druid unless all 3 Druids are competent. So next up, we've got Bard and Ranger. Same things here. You're compensating for your weak poke. The Bard makes you a murder machine. The Ranger is going to deal with everything that you have problems with. He's going to deal with the wizards. He's going to deal with the other Rangers. He's going to deal with the other Bards. So that's it's just a really good composition to play. And then the last team in A tier here, we've got Warlock and Druid. And this, it functions a lot similar, very similar to like Bard Druid, but instead of the Bard doing Shriek of Weakness and then giving you attack speed buff, it's the Warlock, and he's just looking to Curse of Sacrifice both you guys and then poke his little head off. So go poke at people, try to get alley-oops with the Hydra. So it works pretty well. It just doesn't work as well as Bard And I know bards are really hard to come by, especially good ones. Yeah, you might have an easier time finding a decent warlock. In B tier here, we've got barbarian, cleric. It functions very similar to fighter cleric. So you have res on station. It's just that bards, unless they're playing like their bis kit, they're pretty rough. They really are gear dependent right now. They really are movement speed dependent right now. A fighter can do a lot more with less, in my opinion. So, a barb, what they do well is what I talked about earlier. They keep the enemy's attention. Like, you can't take your eyes off the barb. He's going to hit you extremely hard. So that allows you as a druid to play a more flanky route. He has a ton of health. So does the cleric. They're both typically really tanky, so you play it the same way, where you have 2 different front lines, even 3 different front lines that you can rotate through, a bunch of health. Your AoE heals are typically getting a lot of value. So it is fun to play. It's not like terrible. It's in B tier. But I would say if you just have a decent fighter, the fighter is going to be so much more flexible. There's so many different builds you can run with a fighter to just kind of figure out what works for you guys, where a barbarian is really just move speed, hard-hitting two-hander, lots of throwing axes. Like, that's barbarian in a nutshell today. So it's very one-sided, and it doesn't really work super well. Like, it sounds cocky, but I just feel like bear is a better druid in basically every way. And then we've got fighter druid. Again, middle of the road here. You have lots of heals. You don't have a res, so the downside is no res. You have decent mobility if you're running like a rondel fighter that can really hold their own and have decent poke and have decent PDR. It is pretty fun, but nothing really to write home about here. And then in the middle of the road, we've got Wizard Ranger. This is a build that's not really going to do anything for you. You're going to have to play around them. They're going to deal with your weaknesses. They're going to deal with the wizards, the rangers, and stuff like that, and they're going to be able to poke their little head off, and you're going to be the healer. You're going to be the support. You're going to be the kill securer. You're going to be the zoner. So if anybody pushes them, you're going to kill them. If any kind of melee tries to get in on you guys, you're going to kill them. But you're not going to be able to play super aggressive with Druid on this. So I hate playing with this type of composition because I feel like I just can't do my job. I can't get in there and do what I want to do and right-click people with Bear and punish. So I just feel like it's not super valuable. And not only are you going to get fireballed by your wizard, but Rangers miss their shots occasionally, especially when you're the size of a barn. It's much easier to hit you on accident than it is to hit the enemy. So, it's also you step in your teammates in your Ranger trap all the time. Like, I don't know about you guys. A Ranger can tell me 14 times where he put the trap, and I'll still fucking step in it like every time, man. And we got Barbarian Fighter here. This is like a super beefy front line. It's still not like the worst thing ever. The problem here is if you don't have good game sense and you commit too early to a fight, you dive, like if you're the first one in, or if you die early, your team has no heals. You have no way to reset. Barbs are generally slow unless they're running super uber bis. So like you're stuck in a lot of different fights you don't want to be in, and your team is heavily dependent on your game sense more than anybody else. Like the Barb can fuck up a lot, the Fighter can fuck up a lot. You really have to be, as the Druid, you have to be in the right place at the right time for basically every fight that you're going to take. And then, indeed here we got Rogues. They're terrible in threes. Basically everybody agrees that they're terrible in threes. So just don't even bother. So that is team compositions, and